In the rolling hills of North Carolina, the air is thick with anticipation. At the massive Greensboro-Randolph megasite, construction cranes are finally lowering their loads, and the hum of high-tech machinery is beginning to fill the cavernous halls of Toyota's newest $14 billion battery facility. In a matter of weeks, the first lithium-ion cells will roll off the line, destined to power the next generation of electric vehicles. It is a scene of industrial triumph, a picture-perfect example of American manufacturing might. But 400 miles to the west, at Toyota's flagship plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, the atmosphere is indistinguishable from a wake. The machines are still running, but the rhythm is broken. The Lexus production line, once the jewel of Toyota's North American operations, has stopped completely. The RAV4 line, which used to churn out SUVs for the global market with clockwork precision, is now operating at a fraction of its capacity. Workers who built their mortgages, their children's college funds, and their entire lives around the stability of Toyota are watching their shifts get cut, their benefits shrink, and their futures dissolve into uncertainty. This tale of two factories is not a paradox. It is the cause and effect of a single catastrophic policy decision. We are witnessing the beginning of an industrial migration that nobody in Washington wanted to admit was possible. What is happening in Kentucky is not an isolated tragedy. It is playing out across the entire American auto industry. The cause isn't a recession. It isn't a pandemic. It isn't even a shift in consumer taste. It is policy. Specifically, the 25% tariffs on imported cars and parts that were sold to the American public as the silver bullet to bring manufacturing jobs flooding back to the Rust Belt. Instead, those tariffs are doing the exact opposite. They are pushing automakers, suppliers, and billions of dollars in generational investment straight across the northern border into Canada. Let's start with the cold, hard numbers, because they strip away the political rhetoric and reveal the economic carnage. When the White House rolled out its 25% tariff on imported cars and auto parts earlier this year, the stated goal was seductive in its simplicity: force automakers to build more vehicles in America, using American parts and American labor. The slogan was, "Make it American again." But the global automotive supply chain is not a simple assembly line. It is a complex, fragile web that spans continents. When you attack one node, the entire web vibrates. According to the Center for Automotive Research, automakers operating within the United States faced nearly $18 billion in new costs within the first year of the tariffs alone. These were not theoretical costs. They were immediate cash flow killing expenses. Automakers had two choices: eat the costs and watch their margins vanish, or pass them on to consumers and watch demand collapse. They did both. Production across North America fell by more than 20,000 vehicles per day. In just 1 month following the full implementation of the tariffs, output dropped by a staggering 30%. In economic terms, that is not a correction. That is a collapse. The impact was democratic in its destruction. It didn't matter if the badge on the hood said Ford, Chevy, or Toyota. Volvo began scaling back its operations in South Carolina, delaying the ramp-up of new EV models. Audi publicly reconsidered its expansion plans for the U.S. market. Mercedes-Benz and Hyundai began quietly shifting production allocations to other regions. Ford and GM trimmed domestic output by up to 10%, citing material shortages and skyrocketing logistics costs. The average price of a new car in the United States broke past $50,000, transforming vehicle ownership from a middle-class staple into a luxury good. Millions of families found themselves priced out of the market overnight. The damage goes deeper than the assembly plants. It strikes at the invisible army of suppliers that feed the industry. A modern vehicle contains roughly 30,000 parts. If even a handful of those parts are hit with a 25% tax, the economics of the entire car fall apart. The supply chain that feeds America's auto plants depends on imports for nearly 40% of the total value of a vehicle. This includes everything from specialized microchips to simple fasteners. When you tax those imports, every link in the chain feels the pain. Raw material costs surged instantly. Steel, aluminum, and copper prices rose between 18% and 40%. as the market reacted to the protectionist barriers. Industry analysts estimate this added roughly $3,000 to the raw cost of every car built domestically before a single worker touched it. The fallout for small businesses has been devastating. More than 500 parts suppliers across the Midwest and the South have either suspended operations or closed temporarily. These are small and mid-size manufacturers, family-owned stamping plants, injection molding shops, and logistics firms that built their businesses around steady demand from the big automakers. When that demand evaporated, they didn't have the cash reserves to weather the storm. They simply shut down. While American plants were cutting shifts and American suppliers were locking their doors, something very different was happening north of the 49th parallel. Ottawa saw the chaos unfolding south of the border and made a calculated, strategic decision. Instead of retaliating with bluster, they responded with stability. Their message to global automakers was straightforward. Canada offers predictability. Canada offers access to global markets. And most importantly, Canada offers an escape from political volatility. Automakers didn't just listen, they moved. Honda dropped a bombshell announcement, a record $15 billion investment to build a massive electric vehicle and battery complex in Ontario. Backed by nearly $5 billion in government incentives, this project is a game changer. The site is expected to create around 1,000 high-paying jobs and reach a production capacity of roughly 240,000 electric vehicles annually by 2028. Toyota followed the same path, expanding its footprint in Ontario rather than the US. Why? Because Canada has spent decades building a web of free trade agreements. Through the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, and the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, USMCA, a car built in Ontario has tariff-free access to over 50 global markets. This is a reach that US manufacturers can no longer take for granted. A Toyota RAV4 built in Ontario can be shipped to Japan, Europe, or Australia without friction. A RAV4 built in Kentucky faces a wall of retaliatory tariffs and trade barriers. In the global chess game of manufacturing, Canada positioned itself as the queen, while the US pawned itself into a corner. To understand the scale of the failure of US policy, one need only look at Toyota's balance sheet. The company has historically been the poster child for foreign investment in America, employing tens of thousands of US workers. But under the new tariff regime, Toyota became one of the biggest victims. The company's global earnings took a hit of nearly $9.5 billion, the sharpest drop in the industry. Within the first quarter of 2025, Toyota's North American operations swung from a reliable profit generator to a massive loss. Tariffs pushed operating expenses toward $3 billion in a matter of months. The company was forced to cut its annual profit forecast by 16%. Toyota executives, usually known for their diplomatic reserve, have been candid in their assessment. They stated publicly that protectionism doesn't protect jobs, it relocates them. And right now, it is relocating them out of Kentucky. The Georgetown facility is now a cautionary tale. It is a ghost of its former self. Suppliers in the surrounding counties are reducing shifts. Logistics companies are watching shipment volumes drop to levels not seen since the Great Recession. Auto haulers report the weakest shipment volumes in 15 years. Truckers sit in diners, waiting for calls that never come. The problem runs deeper than a few bad quarters. The entire center of gravity of the North American auto industry is shifting. Industry analysts warn that if the current path continues, the United States could lose up to a quarter of North America's entire auto supply chain by 2030. Canada, meanwhile, is expected to capture up to 40% of the region's electric vehicle and battery production capacity within that same period. Every new factory announcement in Ontario is a factory that didn't happen in Ohio, Michigan, or Kentucky. Every $1 billion invested in Canadian battery plants is $1 billion that isn't flowing into the American Rust Belt. The United States is retreating behind political walls, hoping to isolate itself into prosperity. Canada is expanding through consistency. integrating itself into the global economy. While the economic fire burns, a legal battle is raging to put it out. The legal foundation of these tariffs is currently being challenged in the highest court in the land. A coalition of American businesses, desperate for relief, filed a lawsuit arguing that the tariffs are unconstitutional. Their argument is simple. Tariffs are taxes, and under the Constitution, only Congress has the power to levy taxes. The president cannot simply wake up and tax the American people by executive fiat. Two lower courts have already agreed with the businesses, ruling that the president lacked the authority to impose these tariffs under the guise of national security. The administration argues the tariffs are lawful under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, of 1977, a law designed to give the president economic weapons during a national emergency. However, during oral arguments, the Supreme Court justices seemed deeply skeptical of the government's overreach. Chief Justice John Roberts noted pointedly that the statute doesn't even use the word tariff. Justice Amy Coney Barrett questioned why staunch allies like Spain and France were being treated with the same economic hostility as strategic rivals. Justice Sonia Sotomayor cut to the heart of the matter, stating directly to the Solicitor General, "You want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are." If the Supreme Court rules against the administration, the tariffs could disappear overnight. This would potentially lead to a messy, chaotic reimbursement process where the government owes billions back to importers. But for automakers, the uncertainty of the legal battle is almost as damaging as the tariffs themselves. You cannot plan a 5-year model cycle when you don't know if your parts will cost 25% more next month. While manufacturers wait for legal clarity from 9 judges in Washington, Canada is offering certainty today. Canada isn't just winning a few factory deals, it is systematically positioning itself as the continent's manufacturing hub for the next generation of vehicles. Negotiations between the US and Canada even collapsed in late October after a petty dispute over a controversial advertisement, further cementing the image of the US as an unreliable partner. The irony is tragic. A trade policy designed to strengthen American manufacturing is instead fragmenting it. From the steelworkers in Pennsylvania, to the parts suppliers in Tennessee, to the assembly line workers in Kentucky, everyone is feeling the pressure. The United States is building walls to keep jobs in, but those walls are only succeeding in keeping investment out. What is happening is a slow, quiet, but massive migration of industrial power. The factories are moving north. The supply chains are rerouting. The question isn't whether it's happening. The empty loading docks in Georgetown answer that. The question is whether American policymakers will recognize the disaster they have created before the migration becomes permanent.